Welcome to the Sideload, where we're still digging out from this weekend's snowstorm. I'm your host, Will Sattelberg, who is a little under the weather, so I'm going to keep this short. I'm so excited to get to our interview with Jason Howell, who you probably know from the Android Faithful podcast, alongside a bunch of other projects. We're going to be talking the state of the Android industry. That includes Samsung, Google, Motorola, OnePlus, a little bit of nothing discussion in there as well. We're really focused on North America. It's a really fun discussion. I'm not going to keep you. Here's myself and Jason. January might be almost over, but to me, and this is a CES thing, but to me, 2026 still feels pretty fresh. And I think that makes it as good of a time as any to take a look at the state of the Android industry. And there's nobody I can think of better to do that than my friend and fellow Android podcaster, Jason Howell. Jason, welcome to the show. It's great to have you, man.
Well, it's good to see you. It's so cool to be here, and I appreciate it.
You are you've always been one of my favorite Android podcasters, and it's great to finally welcome you into the Sideload fold for whatever first 20 episodes.
I love the
still.
name.
You're making
it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's got an attitude to it. Yeah, it's the Sideload.
Thank God it's not completely dying. I picked the or actually I should give credit to Ben Schoen at 9 to 5 who came up with the name. And then I want to say a week after the first episode came out, Google was like, by the way, we don't really feel the whole Sideload thing anymore.
Oh god.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I know.
Sticking around with
Google and its waffling ways comes in. But
yeah.
I mean, it didn't go anywhere. You can still sideload.
Exactly.
You could call it, the alternative name could have been the ADB, or that doesn't have a nice
doesn't
ring
roll off
to
the
it.
tongue.
Yeah, no. The unknown sources, no.
Yeah, the tap a notification from your browser to open up settings in order to enable sideloading, and then
the toast message.
Exactly.
Could have been so many other things, but I think Sideload is the solid.
It's a little briefer. Choice. It's a little shorter. I think all the RSS apps have a character limit for your show name, so it's probably for the best.
Yeah, probably for the best.
We're here today, Jason, to sort of look at the state of the Android industry as it is in North America, I would say, right? Mm-hmm. So we were talking in the show before, the pre-show before this, that you and I know the US brands best, and that kind of limits our scope a little bit, but at the same time, I think allows us to comment a little larger on the scope of what Android brands are like in the US right now. And really this was inspired by the roller coaster last week as you're listening to this, of rumors surrounding the fate of OnePlus. And we also saw Asus pull out of the market. They were not as much of a North American player in recent years, but there is shifting lines across these brands that I think it's worth just kind of looking at what these companies are doing right, what they're doing wrong, how they might be able to find more success in an ever crowded field. Although to a certain extent, less crowded than ever, actually. There is
at least
space
here in the US.
Around. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of talking about that there. When you're talking about the US market, it used to be so much richer, right? Like you used to have the LG and of course Asus, you used to have that. That only recently seemed to go up in smoke. Although did the CEO say like for good or just for the next year? Or I could never really understand there. Like you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't seem as like maybe definitive as LG, where LG was very much like it is over. It's done. Canceling everything. Done. But at the same time, I think the things that made people excited about products from Asus in the past were like the more compact devices or their more fully featured gaming phones, and both of those have kind of gone away. Their gaming phones are a little bit more streamlined and missing some of those like enthusiast features people were really excited about, expandable storage and so on. They have camera cutouts now as opposed to having like a larger bezels at the top and bottom,
unobstructed screen.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of surprised about that because of the ROG thing. Like I've never been a huge gaming phone. Like I'm not the target market for a gaming phone, right?
Yes.
I've certainly been a gamer in the past, but these days, God, I just don't have enough time to do it. So I understand the need for a smartphone, especially as smartphones have become more powerful and the apps have become more full featured, and games have definitely broadened out beyond their beginnings, where they were really just these simple little time passers, and now they're very detailed and depth, full of depth and everything. So I was kind of surprised about that, because I felt like, the ROG phone really, and the ROG brand really has, I thought, a strong brand, but apparently in the Android device world, not strong enough for ASUS to keep it. And so one more competitor in the US checked off the list with a red marker.
Well, it's interesting because, this is not in the mobile world, but we saw Sony kind of pull out of the TV business this month. And it's just, it's interesting to me, the decisions some of these companies are making in terms of what they're prioritizing in their portfolio as they are looking ahead to what is going to make money. And obviously lots of these companies are looking at AI or AI related technologies, but also it seems to just kind of be one of those periods of like, if we don't think we're doing this right, or we don't think we can do this better than our competitors, let's pull out, or let's sell the business. And I wonder how much of that we'll see over the next few years. I wouldn't be surprised to see more consolidation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that I think really leads into, like you said, the can't remember if you said it in pre-show actually or just now, but the whole OnePlus situation that happened, I guess a week ago as of the time of the recording. And that's really seems to be largely what's at play with that story, is this kind of consolidation of the industry, or consolidation of these brands. And it's been kind of like, rearing its ugly head with the OnePlus story for a while now, with the whole Oppo, Realme, Vivo, OnePlus, kind of, I don't know. Is that would that be considered a conglomerate?
I was about to say conglomerate. I was going to say conglomerate. So we're on the same. At least our brains are linking up here. Yeah, I don't know what else to call it.
I don't have many opportunities in my life to say the word conglomerate, and it's kind of a weird word when you say it out loud. So I appreciate the opportunity.
It's a lower C conglomerate, but it's something like that. Well, let's start with OnePlus then, because I can't think of a better place to start than what kind of inspired this entire topic.
Sure.
So I have, for the video listeners, I'll hold up my notebook, but I wrote down a bunch of notes, bullet points over the companies we're going to talk about, which is Google, Samsung, Motorola, OnePlus, and then maybe nothing if we have a bit of time. They're obviously a much smaller player than the other four.
But they kind of fill that spot of like OnePlus a number of years ago.
They do. Yeah. I mean, and obviously there's there's lineage there, right?
There is total lineage.
And so it makes sense, but it is interesting to essentially watch a company try to do the OnePlus thing again, but in a vastly different mobile market, right? Because launching a boutique enthusiast brand in 2014 is a lot different than doing it and they didn't launch in 2024, but let's just round up 10 years, 2024. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, it's tricky. And obviously we saw them kind of only expand to the US last year officially without having to like buy a practically warranty-less phone with the Nothing Phone 3. So it's just they're kind of fascinating. We'll get to them maybe towards the end. Okay. I wrote down a blurb for each of these companies, kind of where I think they are, and the OnePlus one is a little mean. I think OnePlus, the writing is a little bit on the wall with them. This report, obviously, OnePlus came out both through their North American channels, their Indian channels, and said like this isn't true. The statements were different, but it kind of said the same thing. At the same time, though, like regardless of that report, setting it aside for a moment, if you just look at the grander picture of the last few years of OnePlus and like the trajectory that company is on, like if you asked me before that report came out, like, do you think OnePlus is going to pull out of the North American market the next 2 to 3 years? It would have been like, yeah, probably. Like it does feel a little bit like that is their destiny in a way, because they don't have carrier store support anymore. Their devices are becoming a little less unique. They've lost their Hasselblad partnership. The more unique designs of the OnePlus 12 and 13 are not there on the 15. I don't know. I'm very iffy on this brand, which is weird because a year ago, the OnePlus 13 was my front runner for best phone of 2025, and still
one.
kind of was.
Yep.
So Jason, I'm interested.
Well, and then
in
you had
your
even
take.
a year before that, you had the Fold, their Fold take,
which was my phone of 2023, straight up.
And many people arguably said, one of the best foldables, if not the best foldable of that year, which is a huge, I mean, even if they're in that running, right? They're going up against Samsung as the notable behemoth in that category that had been iterating on foldables for years. And then OnePlus, scrappy, I continue to call them scrappy upstart, which they're not really a scrappy upstart anymore, but still I see them as a scrappy company, probably because of the legacy more than anything. But for them to come out with a foldable that could even be in that conversation and be as good as it was like, oh my goodness.
Not even just in the conversation. You could argue kind of shaped what foldables have become, right? Like if you look at foldables before and after the OnePlus Open, you're like, well, they're all kind of taking ideas from the OnePlus Open. They Samsung and Google both refreshed their lineup to more accurately like reflect the aspect ratios of the OnePlus Open. That's not what they were doing before that device. It's just interesting to have watched this product that, the tech press in general were pretty hot on, and it obviously didn't make a massive success in terms of sales with general consumers, but it seemed to have like it's your favorite tech company's favorite tech product, to quote favorite rapper's favorite rapper, right? Like it's right. The like, real heads know what's up with the OnePlus Open. It's a fascinating product.
But maybe that right there is kind of the problem with OnePlus in the US to begin with, is that they began as a true enthusiast brand. It's the thing that really brought, and they did that with much bravado, right? Like they really kind of came out of the gate with a very unique sense of how to market a new smartphone, calling out the big players, coming in, undercutting prices, and really being noticed for the fact that, oh, wait a minute, this is an inexpensive phone that really does deliver on a lot of what they're saying. Maybe not all of it, but they were the flagship killer, and that got them very far from a marketing standpoint. And maybe not entirely a flagship killer, but man, it was impressive to see what they were doing for the cost of that device. And then slowly over time, year after year, that price kind of crept up. They still kind of appealed largely to the enthusiast market. They had their moment where they entered into carrier stores. I can't remember which ones. Was it just T-Mobile, or I know that they had their carrier year. I think it was like a year or a year and a half.
T-Mobile was the longest. And then like I almost want to say they did like they one phone with AT&T, but like don't quote me on that. It just feels like maybe they flirted with one other carrier at one point.
And when they did that, I seem to recall those years as being the real bland years for OnePlus.
Yes, I agree.
Where suddenly there they are in the carrier stores, and that's kind of what you're working for when you're the, go back to the term scrappy upstart trying to make it in the US market. Like eventually you got to kind of be in the carrier stores to really, really make it. They did that, but that was coupled with some really boring phones. They got away from their identity. They started to kind of distribute themselves to all of these different levels of different devices that just kind of lacked any sense of identity and signature and style, which is, I think, been one of OnePlus's real strong suits. So then they return to their roots. They're no longer in the stores, but you can still buy them at like Best Buy and whatever in the US. But then what we've seen in recent years, last couple of years, has been another kind of these moments where OnePlus as a brand, as that identity that we've all really gravitated toward as enthusiasts, again, enthusiasts coming up, and I think that's a large part of the problem here, but even those hooks start to disappear. And so then you start losing even your enthusiast base. And as a brand in the US, like, what are you left with? I would hate to see OnePlus not be in the US market anymore, because I do think that they've done some really impressive things. The Open, not the least of which, as far as what you were talking about, having that influence and an impact on foldables, it would make me really sad to see OnePlus exit. I'm not entirely convinced that that's happening yet, but I hope it doesn't. I hope they continue on. But I could see if it happens. I could see it happening. I hope it doesn't.
Same boat. And I don't want to count them out too fast because, as you said, they sort of went through, I'm going to set aside their like earliest days, but you had something like the OnePlus like 7 was like a massive hit, or 7T were like fan favorites, right? And then like that was sort of the apex of the brand. They kind of go through a fallow period with the 8 and the 9 are kind of not as well received. The 10 fixes a few of those issues, but it's not really till the 11 and the Open, that they really start figuring it out. And then I think the OnePlus 12 series and 13 series especially were excellent, like flagships. That the cheaper R models for both of those phones were also really good. The Hasselblad camera tuning was like excellent. And it's what makes it so frustrating that like this phone like loses so much of what I liked about those products. I don't think, I think the Oxygen OS 16 upgrade was a miss and copies Apple in all of the wrong ways. It's just, it's frustrating to see something. So, I mean, especially in its like sandstone color that I'm holding up right now to the video, the OnePlus 15. Yeah, that's
what I have.
It looks, and it looks like a reference device. It looks like a CAD
that's
model.
That's so funny that you say that. That is true. I actually don't mind the device, but
it's not awful. Yeah.
It is kind of referencey. That's a really good point. It kind of looks like it's made of cardboard or something.
A little bit. A little bit. It doesn't help. And you compare it to that, like, and you're going to hit or miss on finishes, but that like faux leather blue with the shiny metal sides on the OnePlus 13 was such like a striking look in comparison. It didn't look like, it still doesn't look like any other smartphone you can buy right now. And I don't know. I hope they kind of regather their vision. They've figured it out before after a misstep, and I think they'll get there again. But
I hope so.
It gets more difficult to make that transition again the second time, as we are more and more locked into like if you have an iPhone, you're just gonna buy an iPhone. You have a Pixel, you're just gonna buy another Pixel, and so on. Right?
I think that's a real big challenge from a mass market appeal in the US, which, I think OnePlus has time and time again hoped for that and kind of worked towards that and never been able to quite achieve it, even though they've had a few kind of close steps. And maybe that's what the larger conglomerate, as we called it earlier, maybe that's what they're realizing is, maybe we don't get that in the US. And if we don't get that in the US and we focus all our resources overseas, then maybe that's the better business decision. I also want to take a second and just appreciate the fact that OnePlus at one time with the OnePlus 7 had a pop-out camera, and that was unique.
It was unique,
really, really unique. And I just want to give them the props where they deserve it.
They sort of, the spirit of LG, and I know that was before LG left the market, but the spirit of LG is alive somewhere in OnePlus, even if you're not always seeing it. I really do think they're the closest modern comparison we have to some of the crazy things LG was throwing at the wall.
Oh God, the wing.
The wing. What an incredible phone to go out on, to be honest with you. Like, it is.
The fact that was their last phone is kind of ridiculous.
It's kind of perfect. It's like it's kind of everything about LG's like 10-year smartphone journey like wrapped up into one device. It's great. Totally. Jason, I picked OnePlus, so I'll leave it to you. Google, Samsung, Motorola. Which one do you want to do next?
Oh boy. Why don't we talk about Google? I mean, Google is close to my heart, when it comes to smartphones in the US and day-to-days and everything. I make no qualms about the fact that I am a deep Pixel fan. Like, my Pixel fandom runs deep into my blood. And I know that, I probably shouldn't say this because I am I guess some people would consider me a journalist, but really I'm a podcaster, which just means I voice my opinions in audio form. And sometimes I write about them. But like, I'm a fanboy of the Pixel device. And so I love what Google has done with the Pixel over the years. Some people would argue that, in some ways they've kind of become a boring product, or, I don't know. I continue to be a fan of their approach. Yeah. And Yeah, I guess that's how I'd set it up. I think that the Pixel 10, where we're at right now, and possibly where we're heading, it's a very competent device. I'm not disappointed with it. It does the things that I want it to do. My pictures look great. I actually really do love the camera bar design. It's unique. It's a signature that's impossible to confuse with other devices.
Although growing less unique, this is not Google's fault, but growing less unique by the day, because it's now
that's true.
because Apple kind of took the same concept with the iPhone Air, and then some companies are taking concepts from the iPhone Air. It's weirdly filtered into the it's in the water. It's interesting.
Yeah. As they all pull from each other. It's a very inspiration is gathered from each other. And then suddenly 2 to 3 years down the line, whatever that timeline is, they're all kind of on the same pathway.
It's got to be flattering, right? Like a little bit.
Wow.
If you're on the Pixel team, you have to be at least a little flattered of oh my God, they're sure they're copying Apple, but Apple kind of copied us. So by the
totally
transitive property, they're copying us.
I don't personally hold a company to task for that. I know a lot of people, the real hardcore Android fans are like, oh, they're just they're not copying, or they are copying, or whatever. I'm like,
they're
no,
all
you know what?
copying each other.
They all borrow from each other. Apple's going to do the thing that Apple doesn't have when Google does it, and it's a success. That's going to happen 1 to 2 to 3 years down the line. It's just the way this all works. And at the end of the day, I just want everybody to have a phone that does all the things they want it to do and that they love. And so I'm fine with that. But I mean, our run, or our kind of fondness with, or at least, I'll keep this in I statements, because I guess this is just a my statement. But my fandom with the Pixel goes far back before the Pixel, right? I was a huge fan of the Nexus devices.
Yeah.
I do think that that Nexus DNA, to a certain degree, maybe from a design and playfulness and a weirdness standpoint, sometimes filters into the Pixel devices, but it has gotten a little less experimental, a little more bland over the years. But I don't think that's not serving Google, because that makes it a little more palatable for the mainstream users, let's say.
I totally agree with you. My take on Google is that they have the strongest vision of probably any smartphone brand, in or outside the US, and including Apple. I think they at least it's weird, but they stuck with the Pixel line long enough that they sort of backdoored their way into a vision of it being this AI first product. And regardless of what you think about that, right? And I have my woes with Gemini and every LLM based chatbot, and I think everybody does. But you can't deny that Google has figured out the best way to tie its AI services to a piece of hardware. It's better than any other company has done in terms of launching a hardware product, and they've done it with this lineup.
100% agree.
Yeah, they already have established. And I think that's at the very least, as far as the tech industry is moving right now. And I'm not saying that couldn't shift in the future, but where it's going now, that's a really good direction for them to be in. And I mean, Apple must agree to a certain extent, because they are partnering with Google to use Gemini as an LLM on iOS. So
absolutely are.
They've figured out that key, right? I think that's really interesting. They're also on a growth trajectory, in the US. They're still a relatively small player, but since really the Pixel 9, we've seen impressive, year over year, quarter over quarter growth from Pixel. And whether or not that's because people are bored with Samsung or Apple, or there's just fewer players left in the field, and if you're maybe you're upgrading from an LG phone finally and you don't know where to go now, but
right,
it's clear that Pixel is winning people over in a very interesting way. And they have mind share. Jason, I don't know how many sports you watch, but I'm a big, I watched so much NFL this season. It's the most NFL I've ever watched, for sure. And the amount of Pixel ads alone, and they're not even an official NFL sponsor. If you're a basketball fan, it's everywhere.
Good. Google's doing what it's got to do, to get in front of people from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
It wasn't always that way when it came to their phones, and I'm happy that it is now. Yeah, I mean, from a very subjective perspective, I see a lot of Pixels out in the world, and we walk in very technology minded circles. So it's easy to be like, I could say that about a lot of things. If I kept my exposure kind of umbrella to, I was at CES and I saw a lot of this and I saw a lot of that or whatever. Okay, great. Yeah, of course you did. That's technology people. That doesn't really speak much of anything. But out in the real world, yes, of course, I see a lot of Samsungs. I see a ton of iPhones. I'm seeing more and more Pixels, and I'm knowing more and more people who are not technology minded people necessarily, who have the Pixels. And when I talk to them about it, like, they authentically love them. And so I think what Google is doing right now is good. I think it's working for them. There have been, though, like, haven't there been rumors that, like, oh, Google's going to kill its hardware division? I never believed them, but I feel like we've heard those in the last like year and a half. And I can't remember the details on that, but
no, I can't imagine it happening now. I think Pixel is here to stay. Like, I really think if it was
especially
ever consideration,
because of Gemini,
Gemini is going to keep it around. They're like, regardless of what you think, they are nailing that path better than anybody else in terms of bringing AI features that people might actually want to use to a product that people are buying. Like, it's one of the few companies I would really say is successful in this realm. We have not seen OpenAI launch a hardware product yet. Apple Intelligence was I'll censor it later, clusterfuck. They're really nailing it in terms, like, better than anybody else. And obviously that could change overnight depending on what products launch this year and next year. But right now, that's the biggest thing. The other thing I would say, I know people are upset about Tensor in general. I think Google is really optimizing Tensor for what they see as important, which is, as we were just saying, Gemini and AI. I don't think they care much, if, as long as the vast majority of Android games run on that thing fine. I don't think they care much about general performance. And as a non-mobile gamer myself, Jason, I have had no issues with Tensor G5 on Pixel.
I don't run into any performance issues. Yeah, I hear about those things. I'm like, okay, what kind of edge cases are we talking about here? Like, I think the real kind of like deep tech-minded folks want things with maximum power and massive battery and massive all these things, for those like deep tech kind of edge case uses. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in calling, like, high performance gaming on mobile an edge case use, but I do think that that's an isolated group of people that's going that hard with it. I don't encounter performance issues with my Tensor chips. I haven't. And so when I see those stories, I'm kind of like, okay, well then what kind of use are you talking about? Because, like, I use this phone all day, every day, have for years. And, the ways in which I use a phone and I start to see it breaking down a lot of times has to do with, like, how the camera performs and how quickly I can get into the camera, take a picture, take a bunch rapidly, get out, and does all of that movement and machination, result in like a jittery kind of like, oh, slow down. Great. Now I'm getting like frames dropped and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I never see that on a Pixel.
No,
absolutely never.
Definitely not. Apps aren't constantly reloading in the background or anything like that. No. I struggle to see where I would. The issues I've had with Tensor in the past really came down to like battery drain and like thermal performance, right? And a lot of that spawns from like relatively poor modem choices, and the modem in the Tensor G5, in my opinion, is totally fine. I really have not had it's run as cool as any other phone I've had. I took this was my daily driver at CES, and I didn't have any battery issues, and I was on cellular a lot. I never felt it warming up in my pocket. Those were things that were impacting like Pixel 2, especially, Pixel 6, Pixel 7, Tensor G1, Tensor G2, mixing up my numbers. But
I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you keep track of those numbers.
I said Pixel, and in my head I was picturing the Pixel 6. It's so weird because it's almost the Pixel 6, almost a reboot of the entire series. So it's a chapter thing, right?
I mean, I took the device to CES, and I mean, could I get through a day? Well, like, was it really depleted by the end of the day? Yeah, it was, but it got me through the day. Like, at the end of the day, literally, pun intended, maybe. That's what I really care about with the phone, right? Like, does it have enough battery to get me through the day so that I don't have to have that battery anxiety? Oh shoot, I've got to find a charger like right now, otherwise I'm dead in the water. And I don't get that generally with the Pixel, and I would say that I use it quite a bit. So, I'm not saying other people are wrong when they say it happened to them. I do believe that it happens, but I don't think the vast majority of people are encountering that sort of thing.
So. I agree. One last note on Google, and we'll move on. I just want to say that I think they crushed Material 3 Expressive. I think it's the freshest like Android has felt in forever. It's the freshest any mobile OS has felt in forever, because compared to iOS 26, it's night and day. It's so interesting. Both of these companies launched like fairly large visual overhauls, I'll say, of their OS, and Google's just feels like I'm using like a modern platform. And Apple's just feels like I'm using Windows Vista a little bit.
That's a harsh one.
It's not there. Like it's not unusable anytime I pick up an iPhone or an iPad, but it is a little ugly, and it doesn't totally feel like what it's change for the sake of change. Whereas like Material 3 Expressive really did make my phone feel poppier and more fun and kinetic totally in a way that I wasn't ready for. It was one of those things where I didn't
for it. Kinetic. I like that. I've not used that as a descriptor for what I like so much about Material 3 Expressive. Yeah. Like one of the things that I love to do, and I do it regularly, is I pull down my notification shade and I grab a notification and I tug on it slightly so that it like does the like pop out and then pops back in and stuff. It's like a little fidget for me.
I was about to say it's a built-in fidget toy. Absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely. In other words, 10 out of 10 Google, great job. Built-in fidget. No. They're doing well though. I think I have high hopes for Google.
I do too.
We'll save Samsung for last. I'll pivot to Motorola quickly, because I don't think there's a ton to talk about here.
Motorola's an interesting story, right?
But, well, it's odd. They have a lot of interesting phones, and lots of them do not come here. And so really their entire US presence is just foldables. And right now really just clamshells. They have the Razr Fold on the way, but outside of and actually did you use that at CES? Perfect.
I did. I got some time with their fold, their book style fold, and
it's nice.
Yeah, it's super nice.
It's nice.
I'm really excited for it. It's very, very slender. All of them have a little bit of a crease, but
which is surprising.
Yeah, with the was that the Z Fold 7?
The Fold 7, yeah.
Fold 7, yeah. It was an excellent first out of the gate book style foldable. Not really surprising when you consider how strong their previous clamshells have been, or in particular their last clamshell, the Ultra was pretty excellent. And I love the Motorola story with the Razr, just the fact that like the Razr was a brand so very long ago that
my first phone, the original, or the V3, the Razr V3 on Verizon was my first phone.
Yeah. I actually never had it. I never owned the original Razr. I had friends who did, and I always wanted it. So I had tech lust for that phone,
Jason,
but I never had.
I'm gonna guess you had cooler products than what the Razr actually was once you got over the design. Like you definitely had phones that could do more than the Razr.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember that time period, but I had the LG Envy.
I wanted the NV3 so bad at the time. It had this like very sleek design, and it came in this like really pretty magenta color, I remember. I had a bunch of friends, and I'm not going to say what age I was, Jason. I had a bunch of friends who had an NV3. I won't say it. And I wanted one like so bad because at that time QWERTY phones were like everything, and I was still I was still like a kid essentially. I was a teenager, and like nobody had a smartphone yet. This was like just as the iPhone was coming out, really, but like nobody. This was not middle schoolers, high schoolers have smartphones yet. Like that really didn't happen until I was approaching graduation. So but oh man, this is stuff like, it's stuff like that makes you miss companies like LG or,
right.
I mean, there was just so much differentiation, even though some of the products were kind of bad. Like it was fun to walk into a carrier store because you never knew what layout you were going to see. And something
kind of like a circus.
Something
some
as
of the
simple
devices
as
were very, very bizarre. But fun.
I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss it. And Motorola has that feeling with even with the Razr today to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do like what Motorola is doing there. I think it's a little puzzling that a device like the Signature, which is their kind of like their premium, in air quotes, their most premium candy bar style flagship, let's say, doesn't, as far as I know, doesn't have a US plan, right? It
does not.
Just global?
I believe, yeah.
And so, that kind of ties in with what you were saying earlier. It's like, is Motorola here or are they not? I think they deserve to be. I would love for the Signature to be here. I don't know why it wouldn't be or why their plan is not to bring it here. Maybe that changes over time. But, even their lower and their low mid-tier devices are interesting from the perspective that they don't look like every other damn phone out there. Like at least Motorola cares a little bit about materials. Yeah. About kind of a little bit of uniqueness. Sometimes the performance isn't that great on those devices, but at least they're unique. At least Motorola doesn't automatically believe that if you're spending $100 to $300 on a smartphone, all you get is a basic, looking device that is interchangeable with a million others out there. Like they give you a little something to be proud of, and I appreciate that about what they do.
It was actually maybe not my only, but certainly my biggest disappointment about the Razr Fold so far is that it only comes in black and white right now. And the Pantone color of the year, because Motorola has such a existing partnership with Pantone, they love to do these limited edition or maybe late drops in terms of colors, like that orange Razr that came out after the rest of it, I believe. But the Pantone color of the year is white. It's like another white shade. So they've already, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I would love, we have not seen a lot of like very poppy foldables. Really, they usually all look like they're made to at least fit a little bit into a boardroom environment. And I'd kind of love to see Motorola, at least change that a little bit to make it give me like a lime green Razr Fold or just something crazy that only they are gonna do.
Yeah, give at least the option. I do know that when I was there for CES and looking at all their options they had, I can't remember which of their phones had this, but had a white with Swarovski crystal like dotted pattern.
I think that's the Razr. They made a Razr of that. I remember writing about that last year.
The Razr. So you never know. You might get your Swarovski alternative option for their book style. I don't know. It wouldn't be the one that I choose, but I'd appreciate that it exists.
I'm always looking for. I don't need to like the color. I just want it to be there. Basically, like I just want to know that if I opted to pick something that isn't, black or white, that I can do that. And Motorola's always, or for a very long time, been that company going back to the days of Moto Maker.
Oh, for sure. 100%. I absolutely loved that era of Motorola. That was my favorite era.
Classic Motorola era.
Yeah. Absolute classic.
My big take on them is that they are close to getting it right. I really think they need to figure out their software side more than anything. They have those carrier partnerships that don't seem to be going anywhere. Although maybe there was a slight rumor about maybe AT&T not selling the Razr Fold, but hopefully that is maybe a very specific thing to the Razr Fold and not, Motorola's portfolio in general. A few years ago when their build was a little bit cleaner and a little bit less customized, very similar to AOSP. Yep. But that made it kind of nice to use. Like you would jump on it and felt very familiar immediately. These days, it's a little messier. It's a little more customized, and I don't love all of those customizations. And then they just gotta get their software updates straight. I gotta be honest with you, and I don't know if you caught this, Jason, when in the press release for the Motorola Signature, because their big thing for the Signature is that it's got 7 years of OS upgrades.
Right. Uh-huh.
They made it out in the press release. They made it out to be this like big like fancy high profile feature that you were getting because you were buying the Signature as this like upper class product. And I'm like, no. Like that needs to be your standard. You can't sell that as a like perk for buying into the Motorola Signature. Your competition is doing this on all of their products. So I don't know. It's frustrating.
I agree. I'm always pushing for better, built out, longer, dedicated software updates. I do wonder though, when you're talking about a brand like Motorola that has a lot of low to mid-tier devices with really underperforming and purposefully so. That's a large part of how you get the cost down and everything. I don't know how you commit to 7 years on a device like that, but at least commit to more than like one update, which a lot of times devices in that category, it's like you get one major update and 2 years of security. I'm like, you got to do better than that. I'm sorry. Even though I'm only paying $150 for this phone, you got to do a little better than that.
I'm much more forgiving on the budget side. Like I agree with you. That's too low, but I would take even 3 years of OS upgrades and 4 years of security patches on a $200, $300, even $400 phone. I'm like, it's not great, but like, it's not enough for me to not recommend a product. I really mean more on like the flagship side of things. I want to see that expanded. And honestly, maybe even more than that, just timeliness. Like I would love to see Motorola just speed up their updates a little bit because their OS is not like they're not heavily skinning Android still, even though I have my complaints about what they have done with tweaks. Like, I don't think it should be taking as long as it does to push out to something like the $1,300 Razer Ultra. Like I would like to see those.
No,
get
100%. I totally agree. Yeah. When you're talking about those other kind of upper tier phones, there is much more of a responsibility to, I think the speed of update gets lost a lot when you're talking about the update cycle. It's easy to go like, 7 years, that's great. But if it takes forever to update these things, that you're still living that time with the outdated software that's either insecure or slow as molasses or whatever the case may be. And that's no good too. So you
saw that frustration this time last year with One UI 7 on Samsung's side, where that just got significantly more delayed rolling out to older devices than I think anybody had anticipated, right? Like it launched in January because that was when the Galaxy S25 series launched, but then like it wasn't until like May or June that like we saw a stable release for other devices. And it was, you could tell Samsung fans were getting really frustrated, even though that's actually how Samsung used to roll.
Yes, totally. That's pretty familiar. Should we talk about Samsung?
We should talk about Samsung. I didn't mean to do that, but that's a perfect transition.
Sounds like you're a solid segue.
Do you want to start?
Well, I mean, what can I say about Samsung other than when I get the opportunity to test out their more flagship devices, their primary devices, let's say the S20 whatever series, the Galaxy S series. I'm generally pretty happy with what I see. I give Samsung a lot of credit for the fact that they, in my view, spent a lot of time really kind of going deep on customization when it comes to their software experience. And I always felt like it was an imbalance. It was like, I get where you're coming from. I understand that as a company and as a phone maker, you want to give people so much choice and ability and capability with the software, but somewhere along the line, it just gets to be too much. Like you're hitting people over the head with it every direction. And I don't enjoy an experience where every time I open it, it's popping a thing telling me a new feature that I haven't, I obviously haven't checked out enough because it really wants me to. And so I give Samsung some credit. They've really tailored the experience a little bit more away from that overwhelming load of features without actually sacrificing the features. And I couldn't put my finger on exactly how they've done this differently, other than to say that when I use those phones now, and maybe it's a personal sensitivity thing, I don't know, but when I use their phones now, I'm far less annoyed by how they approach their software stack than I used to be. And a lot of those things are I suppose useful. I don't end up using a lot of them, so they're clearly trying lots of different things, but so there's that. There's the software side, and then I would say the hardware side. I always really appreciate Samsung's attention to how they approach their software. I think they're some of the best as far as designing strong, solid, sometimes more boring, but sometimes attractive and capable smartphone hardware.
It's you summed up my notes so well without having read them. That's crazy, Jason. Yeah, I wrote business as usual basically. That's how I see Samsung at the moment.
I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, it's their hardware is great. Their software is good, although it's interesting that I do think we are starting to approach another round of like, all right, Samsung, like go in and maybe just like clean house a little bit again, right? Like every so often they do these transitions where they're like, and I don't need One UI to die and become something else in the same way that we saw TouchWiz turn into Samsung Experience. Was that the middle chapter? There was a middle chapter.
Yeah, I think you're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
chapter,
and then One UI.
You mentioned TouchWiz, and I felt my heart skip a beat when you said that word.
Yeah, but it skipped a beat because it stopped beating for a moment.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it like stopped, and like I thought I was having a heart attack. But yeah, it was like, oh, don't you say that word. Yeah, the TouchWiz era was uncomfortable and not great.
Well, we all miss the water notification sound effects. I think
I suppose. It just reminds me of TouchWiz. I don't know. I don't have a personal affinity for the water drip.
It's funny to look back. I'll never forget. I know it was the Galaxy S3 launch. I will never forget that they kept being like, it's inspired by nature. It's shaped like a pebble. All of the sounds on it are like water and birds. And I'm like, what is this? I don't what is a phone?
Wasn't that Samsung? That was Samsung, right?
Yeah, this was 2020. Yeah, I don't remember. It's classic. To me, that's kind of where Samsung is. It's interesting because they are throwing a lot at the wall right now. They obviously have the trifold coming. They tried the Edge last year. So I don't want to say they're not experimenting. It's more that like I'm curious to see, the Edge, I think we can just call a failure. Like the reports are not just that it sold poorly, but that they canceled its successor and like threw a basic plus model in to like replace it at the last second possible. Yeah.
I mean, what was it other than thin? Thin and light, and I don't know. They clearly judged that the market really wanted thin and light. And I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that the market didn't want thin and light. Like, when we have a really heavy phone, we complain about it. When we have a chonker, we complain about it. Samsung's here, have one that's neither of those things.
Slim, and everybody's like, whoa, I didn't ask for this. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's so, and like, yeah. I don't actually know any people who are daily driving an S25 Edge. I do know a couple people who are daily driving an iPhone Air. And like, I will say, because that phone is also apparently not selling well, the people who have one like love it. They are like, I've not talked to anybody who has daily drove it, not for a review necessarily, but just like in their lives. And they're all like, yeah, the battery's fine. I figure it out. And like, otherwise I just love having something that is like, I don't feel in my pocket. So I think there's a vision there. It's just a matter of eventually figuring it out. I wish,
yeah. Sorry. I think it was just kind of occurring to me, like the thin and light thing is great, except for the fact that the footprint is still very much the same.
Yes.
It's still very much a normal size smartphone. Yeah. And that's, I think, that kind of merges into one of Samsung's real strengths right now, is that they have been iterating on the foldable line for as long, if not longer, than anyone, definitely any of the major competitors in mobile.
Certainly like publicly, they've had hardware on store shelves since before COVID.
Exactly. Publicly, commercially, they've been iterating on this stuff, and they have the R&D and the budget and everything to, continue to turn out better products each time. We could argue whether that has been the case, but I think the last iteration was pretty remarkable as far as the Fold is concerned, especially. And so when you're talking about thin and light, but you're still talking about the same kind of general footprint shape of a normal phone. Yeah. Then you go to their foldables and you realize, now at least if it's, and now those are getting thinner and those are getting lighter to the point to where they kind of resemble a normal phone. Right. That ends up just being a far more perception of value, I'd say. And so maybe that's the time. Maybe if the thin and light had come out before foldables, it would have been a bigger deal. But now it's like, no, I can get I can get smaller.
Yeah.
Like I can get a flip in my pocket and authentically feel like I don't have a phone in my pocket, but that I just have like a stack of Post-it notes.
Exactly.
There, you know?
Well, that's what I'm waiting for. I need those. I would love to daily drive a clamshell like routinely, but I want it to get, I want it to get this thin, right? Like I want it to get as thin as the Fold 7, and it's the Flip 7 got slimmed out a little bit last year, but not to the same degree. I think it's like 12 millimeters, and I know the Razr series is like 15 when closed. It's chunky. It's small in your pocket, but a Post-it note. But that's the perfect comparison. Yeah, it's a bit of a brick. The foldable strength is, I think, or foldables, I think, are Samsung's best strength right now in terms of having their own identity and kind of knowing where they want to go with these products. And it's interesting that like that's the category that like they can't look to Apple at all for inspiration, which I think we have to say that like that is what the S25 Edge was. The iPhone Air rumors were around for years, and the S25 Edge felt like them trying to get a leg up on Apple. And the answer was like both of them were rejected by the market, which is fascinating.
How do you think Apple's impending foldable will impact Samsung?
I don't,
if at all.
I don't know if it, I guess it just depends on what decisions Apple makes with their foldable. They're a very strange company these days in that they've opened up to taking a lot of ideas from Android, right? So like my go-to example is when they first launched an always on display on, I believe, the iPhone 14 Pro. And at launch, it was, you could only have it with like the dimmed wallpaper. Like your wallpaper was always on no matter what. And so Apple's iteration of the always on display essentially just looked like a dimmer version of your lock screen. So sometimes it would look like your phone was just on. And a month or two later, they eventually added the like black version that like, that's what we think of as Android users as an always on display typically. And it was interesting to see all of the Android users kind of take that idea and like it just meshed together. But it's, on the Apple side, before all that, it's my go-to example of Apple sitting down and saying, okay, we want to do this thing, but it has to be different than what everybody else is doing, even if that makes it like not as good. I'm curious to see if that kind of bites them on foldables, if they feel like they need to do something completely out of left field on their foldables in order to be, to differentiate themselves in the market aside from just being an iOS foldable. And I don't know. Like, I don't know what that could end up being. It could go really well. It could bite them in the ass. I'm excited to see, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Like, I'm curious to know, because Apple usually doesn't come out with a new thing that is just the standard, the thing everybody's
already done. Yeah, exactly. Yes, if they're taking their
time, they always have at least their own spin on it, or they tackle a certain thing that the other things haven't been able to figure out how you make it thinner or more appealing, or in some way, shape, or form. So I have no doubt that if and when Apple comes out with a foldable, it's going to have some sort of unique consideration. I will be curious to see how that impacts a company like Samsung that's been doing this for years and really has gone deep as far as setting its own standard for how foldables should be and and will be designed by them. And I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years as a result.
I agree. I that's pretty much where I'm at on Samsung in general. As a larger picture is just, I think they should really push forward on foldables and maybe bring some of that spirit into their normal non-foldable lineup. Like I would love to see Samsung stop looking elsewhere for inspiration and just think about what they think a future product should be. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Samsung?
No, I mean, I think my final thought on Samsung is that, especially in the last handful of years, every time they have a flagship announcement, which, we have one coming up here pretty soon, I think. And then, we've got, often their foldable later in the year. I'm always listening. Like I'm always very curious. They continue to do things that are interesting. Sometimes they roll out, the kinds of features like software features that make you want to roll your eyes. okay, but from a hardware perspective, and usually on their premiums, they're tackling the most important things that people want to use their phone for in really creative and interesting ways. So yeah.
There we go.
Looking forward to it.
Any big thoughts on nothing? I feel like I've been sitting here as we've been talking about this, and I'm like, is it just too early for them in the US to really even make a declaration on where they're going or where they've been?
I mean, I think it's notable from the perspective that nothing is just one of the few up and comers in the US market
to give it a shot. Yeah, I agree.
To give it a shot.
They didn't need to do that.
No, they didn't, and most seem to choose not to.
Yeah.
And thankfully they are. I appreciate their presence and their existence in the US market because they are kind of doing things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, from a design perspective, their dot matrix kind of UI in the software experience is interesting. You know, I like it. Like, I think it looks nice, and it's usually their phones operate pretty well, and the glyph matrix thing I feel like was a miss. I really didn't connect with the glyph matrix as much as I did with the simple glyph lights.
It's always going to be a risk when you're trying stuff like that, and I appreciate that they thought, you know, let's level this up for the flagship, but I don't know if
that's exactly how I felt. I was like, you know what? I don't connect with this the way I connected with the glyph LED approach. But I'm happy that they're trying, because you just don't see smartphones companies doing that.
Exactly.
They go for the tried and true. This is what other phones have done, therefore we're going to do it too. And I feel like nothing kind of marches to the beat of their own drum. And I appreciate that there are smartphone companies doing that. Like we said earlier, you know, to kind of bookend it, OnePlus filled this role for a long time. Yeah. And now at least we have nothing doing it. If OnePlus is kind of continuing to kind of become more of a sterile brand and potentially go away entirely in the US, at least nothing, given they command no market share in the US right now, but they really are the company that is focused on the enthusiasts. And they're doing lots of things that make enthusiasts happy, you know, because enthusiasts like a unique phone. We like a phone that does things very different from other things, and that someone looks at it and goes, "Oh, what is that? That's interesting." You know, so at least they're there doing that.
I'm worried about. I try not to think about how many purchases I've made that have been driven entirely by novelty. Like, it's 100%.
Yeah.
There we go. I think that's the state of the Android industry, at least as far as, you know, the US market goes. I think it's in a weird spot, but it's been in a weird spot for a long time. I would say I don't think things are as dire as I maybe would have predicted a few years ago, and things aren't as positive as I would have hoped a few years ago, but that's not an awful place to be in. You know, and it does make me feel confident that at the very least, I don't see Google, Samsung, or even Motorola pulling out of hardware anytime soon in the US. I think even on the Motorola side, the Razr and the G series is strong enough to keep Lenovo interested in this market. And so that's a relief that, like, as much as, you know, brands might have dwindled down a little bit, you know, I just can't see those three leaving the US market anytime soon.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about like companies like ZTE with their Next Paper devices, which, you know, that's also an interesting category that I've been following, is this not quite e-paper, but e-paper like display technology that TCL is doing with their Next Paper devices. Not all of those get a release in the US, but some of them do. And I don't know, can you find those in carrier stores? You know, that might be one of those brands that you kind of find filtered off at a corner somewhere of a carrier store.
I don't want to say TCL isn't in a carrier store, because it is entirely possible that, like, this isn't really a carrier store, but you could walk into a Walmart or a Target and see them on a prepaid shelf with like Total Wireless or something. Yeah. So I think that might possible. Be where they are more, because a lot of their phones are like lower end devices. But yeah, you're right. TCL is around and kicking and doing exciting things with Next Paper. I agree with you.
I think the Next Paper technology is great.
Yeah, no, it's I want it on everything a little bit. Maybe not my TV, but everything else.
Right.
Yeah. Jason, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you?
Yeah, no, this has been a ton of fun. Well, that's always fun to hang out with you, and I'm happy I got to finally be on the Sideload. You got to say it with that voice too, so it sounds cool. The Sideload. Where can you find me? Well, I do Android Faithful, which is a weekly podcast.
I'm sure everybody who's listening to this also listens to Android Faithful. So
you would be surprised. But it's basically the spiritual successor to All About Android from Twit. It's now independent. It's called Android Faithful. Been doing that for a few years with a lot of the familiar faces, all the familiar faces from All About Android, actually. Yeah. So, search for Android Faithful, I suppose. And then I have a YouTube channel, kind of like a personal YouTube channel. Just search for Jason Howell. You can find that, AI Insights and other podcasts. I'm doing all sorts of things. I'm not going to list them all, but I'm in many places. So just do a search for my name. You'll probably see them.
Irons in the fire, as they say.
Doing my best.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. It's been a ton of fun.
And that's it for this week's Sideload. Thank you, as always, so much for listening. Rate, review, and subscribe on the platform of your choice. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. Next week, Dominic Preston joins the show. Dom is the news editor at The Verge. We're going to talk current trends, headwinds, maybe a little bit more of a topical show than usual. But it's going to be really fun. Dom is a really fun chat. And I also want to talk to him about blogging in 2026 because he has, both inside and outside of the world of technology, a lot of experience blogging. But that's it. Until then, I don't know. I need a good sign off. If anybody has good sign off suggestions, let me know. But until then, have a great week and stay warm if it's snowing where you are. Bye.